Now, we have been looking at Nehemiah, the book bearing his name, and that's exactly where I'm taking you today. This is somewhat interesting. I'm going to read the 3rd chapter straight through before I do anything for the benefit of those people who are listening on radio. A lot of times I will just take for granted and we get into something, but I'm going to read. It's 32 verses long, and when I'm done, I want you to see that there's a bigger message. Let me just say this. Let me give you a little idea here where we're going. So we know that as the people were carried away, which essentially into bondage, which was the fulfillment of what was spoken in prophecy, the edict for the people to return was spoken by Cyrus at the end of 2nd Chronicles, which opens then in the book of Ezra, that first wave of people that returned. And lots of confusion about what came first, Ezra and Nehemiah, even though our books are ordered this way. That's a subject we may discuss maybe on festival. But what I want you to know is that these people were carried away into captivity, approximately 650,000 people. And of those 650,000 people carried away into captivity, only maybe less than 50,000 returned. And what you're reading here is a list, not of all the people that returned, but of the people who are going to rebuild the walls and the gates. It's not an exhaustive list. And I say not exhaustive because you're going to read, I'm going to highlight some things in the list. But what I want you, there's a first lesson, there's an immediate first application, which is these people were away in captivity for 70 years. That means that some of these people were young children, or some may have been born in captivity, but some definitely remember the former glory. We know that from Ezra's book, where some were weeping and crying and saying, this is not as glorious as what it used to be, and some that were just rejoicing, content that the Lord's place of worship was restored. Now, the point of all this is this. The folks that we're going to look at today, it really doesn't matter why they were carried away into captivity. Forgive me for saying it like this. Prophecy was fulfilled. The land was Sabbathed for 70 years because of the people's failure to listen to God. They had to be carried away. But it really doesn't matter that they were carried away. What matters is those that returned came back with a heart to be obedient unto the Lord. And the first takeaway for today is this. It doesn't matter why you fell away from following God. It doesn't matter what happened. Don't try and even rationalize what it was that became the roadblock that made you cease progressing in God's program. Get up and be like these who returned. And they are memorialized, not for their failure, by the way. They're memorialized in this chapter for the fact they are one of the few that returned and that built or rebuilt. And just remember that. You know, a lot of people will come in and they'll inspect where you've been. And because they have a little bit better history in terms of their sinfulness, or they like to make you think that they are sinless, they will try and tell you that you'll never be anything in God's program. And this chapter here is quite profound because it puts on display the blatant lie of Satan. You know, where you've been is one thing, and if you wander off and if you fall away, that's another. These folks were carried away for God's purpose. But these that came back are memorialized here for the present activity and for a future time. And by the way, the acts that were done here will also be carried into the far future, or maybe not so far, when Christ returns, because some part of this reconstruction of the gates and the walls is quite relevant to the return of Christ. Leave that one alone. So, let's get into this. And I'm going to just read straight through first without saying any commentary. Then Eliashib, the high priest, rose up with his brethren, the priests, and they builded the sheep gate. They sanctified it and set up the doors of it. Even unto the tower of Meah they sanctified unto the tower of Hananel. Next unto him builded the men of Jericho, and next to them builded Zaccur, the son of Imri. But the fish gate did the sons of Hasaniah build, who also laid the beams thereof, and set up the doors thereof, and the locks thereof, and the bars thereof. And next unto them repaired Meremoth, the son of Urijah, the son of Koz. And next unto him, you're going to see a pattern, and next unto him repaired Meshullam, the son of Berechiah, the son of Meshezbeel. And next unto them repaired Zadok, the son of Baana. Next unto them the Tekoites repaired, but their nobles put not their necks to the work of the Lord. And I want you just to put a footnote there, because that's the oddity of this whole chapter. There's everybody working together in service and unity, except for one group of people who decided they were too noble, too good, too distinguished to raise a finger. Save that one. Moreover, the old gate repaired Jehoiada, the son of Pesa, and Meshullam, the son of Besodiah. They laid the beams thereof, and set up the doors thereof, and the locks thereof, and the bars thereof. And next unto them repaired Melatiah, the Gibeonite, and Jadon, the Meronothite, the men of Gibeon and of Mizpah, unto the throne of the governor on this side of the river. Next unto him, it's like naming all the people who were on the Titanic. Next unto him repaired Uzziel, the son of Harhiah of the goldsmiths. Next unto him also repaired Hananiah, the son of one of the apothecaries, and they fortified Jerusalem unto the broad wall. And next unto them repaired Raphiah, the son of Hur, the ruler of half the part of Jerusalem. Next unto them repaired Jediah, the son of Harumapha, even over against his house. Next unto him repaired Hattush, the son of Hashabaniah, and then Malchijah, the son of Harim, and Hashub, the son of Pahath Moab, say that 5 times, repaired the other piece and the tower of the furnaces. And next unto him repaired Shullam, the son of Halohesh, the ruler of half part of Jerusalem, he and his daughters. Quite a list of people. Now, if you notice something, a lot of names end in El or Aya. You notice that? Besodiah, Melatiah, Shemaliah, Shechaniah. All those names that end in Aya are names that are cognate contraction names of Jehovah. And many of the names that end in El are names that are representative of God. And if you go down the whole list, like a crazy person like I would do, you end up looking at all the names. No, don't ask for these. You end up looking at all the names, and you hear about all these people who have a vast majority, I would say at least 85 to 90% of these people have a Jehovah name or an El name or a Jah name in their names, talking about these are not all priests. There's only one high priest, that's Eliashib, that starts the list, and the rest of these are temple workers, goldsmiths, apothecaries, people who make perfumes, druggists, whatever that might entail, because the Hebrew is quite ambiguous there. And the point is that the bulk of these people, their names are important. So just kind of remember that when you're reading through this, it looks like a bunch of ayahs and wow, but they all have, except for a few of the names that have no rhyme or reason. For example, it says here, and next unto him, verse 12, repaired Shallum, the son of Halusheth, the ruler of half the part of Jerusalem, he and his daughters. The valley gate repaired Hanun, and the inhabitants of Zanoah. I like that Hanun is favored by God and Zanoah is stinking, the inhabitants of some stinky place. They built it, they set up the doors thereof, the locks thereof, the bars thereof, 1,000 cubits on the wall unto the dung gate. But the dung gate repaired Malchiah, the son of Rehab, the ruler of part of Beth Haserim, and he built it and set up doors thereof and locks thereof and bars thereof. And the gate of the fountain repaired Shallun, the son of Kohose, the ruler of part of Mizpah. He built it, covered it, set up the doors thereof, the locks thereof, the bars thereof, and the wall of the pool of Siloah, or some of your readings may read Siloam, by the king's garden unto the stairs that go down from the city of David. And after him repaired Nehemiah, different Nehemiah, not our Nehemiah, but a different Nehemiah, because it says here, this is the son of Azbuk. and Nehemiah is the son of Hakaliah, the son of Azbuk, the ruler of half part of Beth-zur, unto the place over against the sepulchre of David, unto the pool that was made, and unto the house of the mighty. You getting tired a little bit? Just a little bit? I see some of you, the eyelids are kind of getting heavy. All right, just bear with me. We're at verse 17. We only have a million more verses to go. After him repaired the Levites Rehum the son of Bani. Next to him repaired Hashabiah, the ruler of half part of Keilah, in his part. After him repaired their brethren Bavi, the son of Henadad, the ruler of the half part of Keilah. Next to him repaired Ezer, the son of Jeshua, the ruler of Mizpah, another piece over against the going up to the armory at the turning of the wall. After him Baruch, the son of Zabbai, earnestly repaired the other piece from the turning of the wall unto the door to the house of Eliashib, the high priest. After him repaired Merimoth, the son of Urijah, the son of Koz, another piece from the door of the house of Eliashib, even unto the end of the house of Eliashib. After him repaired the priests and the men of the plain. After him repaired Benjamin and Hashub over against their house. After him repaired Azariah, the son of Messiah, the son of Ananiah, by his house. After him repaired Benui, bless you, the son of Henadad, another piece from the house of Azariah unto the turning of the wall, even unto the corner. Palal, the son of Uzai, over against the turning of the wall, into the tower which lieth out from the king's high house, which was by the court of the prison. After him Pedaiah, the son of Parosh. Moreover, and this is kind of interesting, your Bible will read this over and over again, the Nethinims, which are, you don't read that in the Hebrew, they're just temple workers. They're people who just work. They have a special name. It sounds like it's too close to Nephilim. I don't know why they did that, but they're just temple workers. So they dwelt in Ophel, which is that high tower, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, under the place over against the water gate toward the east, and the tower that lieth out. After them, the Tekoites repaired another piece. So this is, you see, there are some people here that went the second mile. We'll encounter, there's at least three groups, the Tekoites, the Merimoth group, and the, I believe, the Eliashib group. They went the second mile, and it seems like they went and they did a little bit more. And there's always those people. When it comes to the work of God, you'll always have people who are ready to go the second mile for the cause of Christ. And then you'll also have the people like the nobles that they won't lift a finger. They won't do anything. So you can find a lot of stuff inside this seemingly confusing genealogy of people next to him and after him and everything else. So the Tekoites, verse 27, repaired another piece over against the great tower that lieth out, even to the wall of Ophel. From above the horse gate repaired the priest, everyone over against his house. After them repaired Zadok, the son of Immer, over against his house. And after him repaired Shemaiah, the son of Shechaniah, the keeper of the east gate. And after him repaired Hananiah, the son of Shelemiah. And Hanan, the sixth son of Zalaph, another piece. After him repaired Meshullam, the son of Berechiah, over against his chamber. After him repaired Melchiah, the goldsmith's son, under the place over the Nethinims, and of the merchants over against the gate Mifkad, and to the going up of the corner. And between the going up of the corner unto the sheep gate repaired the goldsmiths and the merchants. And the first thing I want you to see in what we just did, we just covered this whole territory. When you read this, it can stay as flat as where the paper starts and ends, or you can see how wonderful it is that God would kind of set this up to show us in the people that built an interesting picture of how God does things and the gates and how they represent things. So I'm going to try and do a drawing. The unfortunate thing is that everything here is laying in the wrong direction for me. So if I was going to draw all the gates, which I'm going to do, but I'll have to do it in part and in portion, this board would have to be turned this way. So think of what you're looking at. Everybody look down at their right foot. Look down at your right foot. What we just looked at is kind of like what your right foot looks like. So, a little bit larger towards the inside of the large toe and then comes down a little bit more now. That's about the shape of what we're looking at. So you have an idea of where we're going. let me start here. And let's call this corner, let's call this up here, the sheep gate. So we have here first the priest, Eliashib, the high priest. His name, just for the record, means God restores. And then next to the sheep gate, you've got two towers. Those don't look much like towers, but they are. The Tower of Mia, which is actually properly with a definite article, the 100. And the Tower of Hananel, which is, simply put, the grace of God. So two towers. Not sure you'll be able to read any of this, but at this point, don't worry. But right there in the middle, right beside the high priest, God restores. I want you to look and see how God does these interesting things. It says here, we're reading about who was next to the high priest and his crew. And it says, the men of Jericho. And if you know your Bible, you know that Jericho was the cursed city. And it was cursed, never to be rebuilt. We know what happened for the one that tried to rebuild it. But these men came out of that cursed city. So it's very interesting that the men of Jericho are working right beside the high priest, his name in English meaning God restores. That's why I said this is a very interesting thing to look at this whole picture and see how God designs things so beautifully. Let's call the sheep gate our starting point, Alpha. Now, I want you to notice something about the sheep gate. The sheep gate, it says, they sanctified it. It's the only place of all the gates and walls that were sanctified. No other place was sanctified. They made it holy and they set it apart. And this is very interesting. You know, when you start looking at shadows and types, you can take something too far, but this one is pretty straightforward. You realize that this represents sacrifice. It preeminently and predominantly represents Christ. But when we talk about it, we first have to talk about that gate representing what would be brought in to be sacrificed. And then ultimately, as John declared, behold the Lamb of God who taketh away the sin of the world, John 1:29. So we can see this gate and this area has a special position. It's right at the corner. It begins. That's why I said I'm labeling it Alpha. But it's the only one of the gates that has been sanctified, that has been set apart. So when we talk about the sacrifice, we could look at this from the Old Testament. Isaiah 53 talks about he was led as a sheep to the slaughter. Or we could talk about it in New Testament dimensions. I believe it's in John 5. Here we go. John 5 talks about this. After this, there was a feast of the Jews. Jesus went up to Jerusalem. And now there is at Jerusalem, by what your Bible says, your King James says sheep market, but it should say sheep gate. That's what it should read. If you have a number like mine, a margin, it says gate, but that's exactly the way it reads. There is at Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, which is called in the Hebrew tongue Bethesda, having 5 porches. And if you've ever been to Israel in recent excavations where they've dug that up, that area is just exposed, and it's quite marvelous to see that when you read something like that, you can actually be looking at, what is recorded where Jesus walked and healed the man that's recorded in this passage. So there's no mistakes here. When we talk about types, I'd go so far as to say that I think when they led Jesus out, when they led him out of the city, I believe they even led him out by the sheep gate just before he was crucified. Now, there's a lot of debate about this. People talk about, if you've been to the Holy Land, you know that there are at least 3 different trajectories, if you will, for Via Dolorosa. Depending on which faith and what you observe, that's how you will find wherever you're at. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. But all I want to say to you is that it would not be absurd that that gate would often have been the gate for Jesus to come in, and definitely that he was led out of. So I want you to see, we've got the high priest, and right next to the high priest are men who are from a cursed place. And I love the fact that there is a picture of the gospel, if you will, just right here. If we went no further than this to see how God is no respecter of persons, and he lets these men who come from a cursed place work beside the high priest to build. That's why I said, there's way too many people talking about where somebody's been or the lifestyle they've led or how sinful or how good. And you read right here, and it's right smack dab in front of your eyes to see that right beside the high priest are men who came from a cursed place, working together with men who were chosen and consecrated by God. So go figure that one out, and that tells you about the grace of God even in an old dispensation. Now, from these two towers, we've got next to the men of Jericho, we've got Zachar, the son of Imri. If I don't get through all the names, I'm going to just highlight the ones that are probably the most important at this point, or the ones that I'm trying to highlight. After the tower right here, we've got another opening, which is the fish gate. And that should not be a complicated situation. We talk about the starting point is the sacrifice. The fish gate will always present or represent what is brought in. Now, I've read and heard 1,000 messages on this particular passage where people talk about this is representing where Jesus said, "Follow me and I'll make you fishers of men." And that may indeed be that. The only difference is that fish were brought into this gate. They were physically brought in. They were collected. So the gate should just represent that which is coming from without, something that was brought from without being brought inside. Now, if you want to say that's fishing people and bringing people in, fine, but just get the point that we're seeing first sacrifice, second of all, what is brought in by these gates. Hassaniah, it says the sons of Hassaniah, and another anomaly, if you were looking, is the fact that these sons are not named by name. So I highly suspect Hassaniah may actually be a place, a group of people versus just one person, where the sons of are not named, so sons of a certain place. And then let's go on. It says here, next to them repaired Meremoth. We've still got a ways to go before we get to a corner. So I'm going to make the corner so you can see how poorly my design is going to look. So we've got the fish gate. We've got, right squeezed in here, we've got the Tekoites working right here. And they'll work on this part of the wall, and then they'll go somewhere else to work. And these worked side by side, but right now you've got Meremoth and his crew, and it says, and then repaired Meshullam, the son of Berechiah, and next to them Zadok, just or right, the son of Baana. Next to them the Tekoites. Now, this is what I said right here. Just remember that this is the place. The Tekoites are working somewhere right after the fish gate, but close by, and their nobles would not put their necks to the work. They were too good for that. And I want you to see they weren't by the sheep gate. They were closest to the fish gate. Let that settle in, because you've got a lot of people that want the benefit of the church. And let me just say this, because it's probably overdue that I say this. Some people think that bringing in represents a sole work of what we do, and that can never be that way. If that is the case, then the building that we do, we'd be no different than those that built the Tower of Babel, for they built it so that they could ascend and reach up to God, instead of those that God chose to work on the tabernacle and erect the tabernacle, who essentially were doing a work. They worked in unity to perform, to bring a place for God to abide. And as I said, God didn't need people to do it, but he made them do it because that's what he does. He uses human vessels, and he has always. This is why Jesus Christ came in the flesh. We could identify with that human-looking vessel to accomplish his purposes. Don't ever forget that. So way too many people I've encountered that they're the nobles, too busy, too good, too important to what? Put their necks to the work of their Lord. Next to them, you're going to find So glad I left an opening here. You're going to find the old gate. And the old gate repaired Jehoiada, the son of Passa, and Meshullam. And Jehoiada is one of those names, Jehovah knoweth, and his sidekick, Meshullam, friend or devoted one. So Jehovah knoweth, and his sidekick, devoted one, building or repairing the old gate. The old gate should for us represent the idea that was highlighted by my late husband regarding what F.B. Meyer said. See, it's a double credit. I have to give double credit because he was the one that told me about it, but F.B. Meyer said it first. There are no new truths. We need to rediscover the old ones. And in this case, the old gate for us may represent what Psalm 119, verse 89 says, what? Forever, O Lord, thy word is settled in heaven. We talk about truths. We talk about things that are timeless. And the old gate should represent that for us, as the fish gate is bringing in and the sheep gate is sacrifice, preeminently, as I said, beginning and ending with Christ's sacrifice. But you get an idea that there is definitely a gospel picture in these gates and walls even. It's kind of interesting. As you move down, we're going to turn the corner here because we're running out of place. We're going to turn the corner, and let's call this the broad wall. And this part of the wall, we've got a couple of people working on. So turning the corner before we really get to what is labeled the broad wall, but we've got Melatiah, and Melatiah is whom Jehovah freed, and Jadon, whom God judged. Their names all mean something. And next to him repaired Uzziel, and that name, Uzziel, power of God. So you can see all of these people. I want you to catch a picture. Their names all have important meanings for the most part, except if your name is Stinking or Flatnose. Their names all have meanings, but maybe even the Stinking and Flatnose have some relevance here. We'll think about that. But what I'm trying to say is that these people were given these names. For us, it's written on our hearts that we are His. We don't need to have a name that ends with an A or an L. We are His. We belong to Him. We've been bought with His precious blood. But all of these people have an important role in building the wall. And what I love is if you read, it says, and next to him, and next to him, and next to him. And what it's saying is in all of this, the record is that these people built in unity, except for the nobles. All of these people built in unity. What I've been trying to say to you for weeks about through Ephesians 4, one Spirit, one Lord, one baptism, one faith, until we all come to the unity of the faith. Well, here you have the work of God, and the work of God will never be completed until the people who are putting their hands to do the work have one mind and one vision. These people came and responded to the call, let us rise up and build. And I want you to notice something. Not one of these people here, I don't read not a one of these. Maybe the goldsmiths might have had the capacity to understand construction, but they would have worked with fine tools. We're talking about moving heavy brick, heavy stone. Not one of these people, it says, was a builder. I want you to think about that. Well, I have people all day long that will make excuses for not moving a finger. Not one of these people here was a builder. Not one of these people, does it say, was a construction worker or an engineer or some professional something. These were all people who came, and it said, if you read carefully, the record is that they came, and when the call says, let us rise up and build, they did. And the list is quite interesting of all the people who are participating. So let's take a look at this broad wall. And the wall will keep going down a little bit, and we'll tilt in some, and then we'll have this kind of jagged edge like that. So here are some of the folks we're looking at. Hananiah, who is Jehovah's been gracious. Raphiah, who is whom Jehovah healed. Jediah, this gentleman is invoked of God. So you really can see the folks that are working on the various places, they all have these special names. Verse 11, Malchijah, Jehovah's king, working along with Hashub. Hashub is associate or considerate. So let's take a look at this. This was the broad wall over here, broad wall. And then they'll keep descending. We had the house of Jediah. And then over here, we just talked about Malchijah and Hasub, by what we're going to refer to as the Tower of Ovens or Furnaces. We'll just leave it at that. And just before we get to the Valley Gate, we have an interesting something so that everybody can be included here in verse 12 of Nehemiah 3:12. Next unto him repaired Shallum, the son of Halusheth, the ruler of the half part of Jerusalem, he and his daughters. Now, that'll tell you that everybody got out and worked. Now, there'll be people who do Bible commentary who will say, well, that couldn't possibly be women. That might represent some people of some place and get some convoluted crap, because that's all it is. They may be an oddity, but the daughters got out and they worked. That means no one's immune. They all got out to work for a common cause. The Valley Gate. Let's take a look at that. So let's call this over here the Valley Gate. Remember, we're kind of descending down here. Hanun built his name, favored of God. So you can, if you're making the rounds around the walls and the gates, you really see something interesting. We're at the half point. We'll call it the middle of your foot going down towards your heel. And this is actually, if you were reading about Nehemiah's trip in visiting the ruins, he starts here at the Valley Gate and riding on horseback, he'll descend. Think of your right foot again. He's descending around the heel and he'll come up on the other half as well. Couldn't get beyond that. That really does help to kind of put a visual on all of this. So now, as we descend, sorry, but as I told you, I needed something long, not something wide. As we descend, we've got from the Valley Gate, we've got a stretch, and then there'll be kind of something very strange that looks like somebody stubbed their foot or something. So this is the opening right here to the Dung Gate. And I had to do this because that's my nature. I had to look up in the Hebrew whether it really was dung, or so there are 3 Hebrew words for poop. There's no other way to say this. I'm sorry, but when you want to talk about this, you got to know. I want to know. So there is a word in Exodus 29 that references excrement. There is another word in the Hebrew form, manure. This word, dung gate, represents a combination of poop and rubbish. So pretty much anything that had to come out of the city went through this dung gate. Now, oh boy, there's lots of things we can do with this thing, I'm telling you. But what I like about this concept here is, again, it shows you that as people move through the gates, and you understand you've got the sheep gate, the sacrifice, the fish, the bringing in, the old gate, we'll call it the gate of truth, of eternal truth, never-changing truth. As you move through these, I skipped over perhaps what I should talk about in the Valley Gate, which I will go back and talk about. But the Dung Gate really should be very clear for every person. When I've talked about the Greek word katharizo, where it talks about the cleansing, which is an ongoing process. No one is cleansed immediately, but Jesus, he says, you're clean through the word. And I've quoted many times out of Matthew, where it says, blessed are those pure in heart, for they shall see God. The pure in heart are the catharized. And what is it even in the natural example? A catheter is designed to take out, to draw out. So, because the person may not be able to eliminate themselves. So, when we talk about the dung gate, let's just say that elimination is a necessary part of the body. I spent way too many years crying over people who were just bad apples, when in fact they just went out the dung gate. I know you're going to remember this message. I just know it. Now listen, what I'm trying to say is that these gates and the people who worked on these gates, it's kind of interesting, if you want to make a note here, that the guy who's working on the dung gate, his name is Malchiah, and his name is King Jehovah. King Jehovah, that's his name, Malchi from king, and Aya, Jehovah. King Jehovah, that's his name, is working down here at this rubbish place. Kind of an interesting picture. Let me go back to the Valley Gate for a minute, because I skipped right over what it should be clear if we're looking at this and we're seeing the gospel in the gates and we're seeing people, important names representing characteristics of God in this, we'll call it gospel in the gates, then the Valley Gate should be something we should just take note of. The Valley Gate led you out. You could go down into a certain area, but let's just say for the sake of discussion here that the Valley Gate should be an integral part of our understanding of looking at the whole city. That is, that same word, by the way, for Valley Gate is used in Psalm 23, walking through the valley of the shadow of death. Valleys, as one very wise man once said, are part of the trip. So it should be, we should just kind of put something down there for the Valley Gate that says this is germane to the journey. If you're going to do anything moving around, let's call it the gospel of the gates, you're going to encounter valleys. And another great sidebar on this is that you don't have to camp out at the Valley Gate. You'll end up there periodically, but you don't need to stay there. That's just part of the equation, a gratuitous sidebar, if you will. All right. Now, we talked about this dung gate down here, and this is going to look really ugly, but hey, I'm trying to squish in a couple of tables here to see what happens. So let's make this line, this wall, if you will go up. This would be the bottom of the foot as I just described it, which looks like a nose. But you get the idea of where we are. We're at the base. We're at the bottom. Obviously, a good thing the dung gate is at the bottom and not the top. Okay, then. So we'll come back to that, maybe. No, we won't. All right. So here you've got what's called the fountain gate. And equally in here, I'm going to put a little fake line, which is a line that would ascend up where we might say what is called the sepulchres of David. And there's great debate on whether it's here or whether it's here. But most people hold it to be where I just put it. And then we've got this artificial pool. And if you keep going up, there are going to be two towers up above here, two towers projecting out. And right in between, kind of, you've got to go in a little bit, you're going to find what is being referenced as the water gate. And I want you to notice something. It was not in disrepair. So it's mentioned in there. Perhaps they fixed the walls, but the gate itself was not in disrepair. And we could talk about the water gate as the type of the Word of God, which has never been broken, right? But anyway, I'm just trying to give you an illustration as to where everything is. And let's go back again to look at some of the people, again, who worked on some of these areas. So we talked about the Valley Gate, the Dung Gate, the Gate of the Fountain, Shalun, the wall, the Pool of Siloah, which would be somewhere down here. We're putting it kind of low, Siloam. And after him repaired Nehemiah, the son of Azbuk. Nehemiah, whose name is whom God comforts, or the comfort of God. Told you, all these names mean something. When you think about how powerful it is to read through these, and it just looks like, wow, this is just get me out of this chapter, right? But then you see, if you start putting this together in a pattern, you really see this is an interesting starting place and finishing place to see how all these people work together. Now, it says, after this, verse 17, after him, the Levites, Rehum, the son of Bani, next to him, Hashabiah, the ruler of half part of Keilah and his part. After him repaired their brethren Bavi, the son of Henadad, the ruler of half part of Keilah, next to him. So let's talk about this. For example, we have here Ezer in verse 19, who is help. His name means help. The son after him, Baruch, which is blessing or blessed one. And these are all going up. So I need a new page. Sorry, I wish I could draw it smaller, but then I wouldn't have any place to go with this. So in here, now I'm going to draw the funny foot, all right? It's because I told you, look at your foot. Let's do this. In here, wow, that's a foot with stitches on it, I think. In here, we've got, inside this area, remember what I just did here is we're going to say that this is the valley gate somewhere around here. So in here, you've got the upper house of the king. I wish I could do a better diagram. I have one, but it's just so hideous. I don't want to really show it to you. I just did. All right. The next one would be Azariah's house. So you're going to read where it says, and they repaired next to his house. The next one would be the residence of Benjamin and Hashub. Then you've got one of the residences of Elishab, the high priest. There's another residence that will be towards the top, towards the sheep gate. Then you have down here access to what they're calling the armory. And then right about here, what is called the house of the mighty, which, if you think about it, David's mighty men, that's exactly where they would have lived, right there on the heel of things. That's kind of a cool thing. Sorry for the illustration there, but the point is, as you work your way around, you come to some more interesting points. As you work your way up, new page, as you work your way up, we'll say that we're halfway up the wall. We've got here Ophel, which is supposed to look like this. Sometimes, this is the difficulty. If you look up maps, you'll find that Ophel, some have said, represents close proximity to the Temple Mount. And every map will look a little bit different, so don't quote me. I'm just trying to give you an idea of where things are. But Pedaiah is working close to here. And his name means whom Jehovah delivered. Ophel is the hill, by the way, if you wanted to know what that means. And then let's move back into looking at some of these folks here, because there's a point to all this. It's not just names and picking apart, and wow, that's great to see all of this. But take a look here. So you've got, let me jump in at some place here. Verse 25, Palal, whose name means judge, the son of Uzai, over against the turning of the wall, and the tower which lieth out from the king's high house, which was on my previous page, the top house that I showed you. After him, Pedaiah, that is whom Jehovah delivered, the son of Parash. We know from the record in Ezra, the children of Parash, the children of Flea, or the Flea. Interesting bunch of people and names. Then we have verse 27 again. The Tekoites repaired another piece over against the great wall that lieth out, even unto the wall of Ophel. So somewhere between here and here, you've got the Tekoites again repairing and working on the wall. That's why I said some people will go the second mile. From above the horse gate repaired the priests and everyone over against his house. So the horse gate, and this is where this becomes kind of important. So down here we have Ophel. Then we've got, I'm going to make a little slash like that. We've got let's seal that one up. Then we've got another opening. So from the horse gate, and who is working on the horse gate? Repaired the priest, everyone over against his house. Why? Because on the inside of this horse gate, you had priests living there as well. And I think part of the interesting thing is you heard me just read about the armory. You've seen the mighty men were living there. So the horse gate obviously represents the fact that people were ready at a moment's notice to get on their horses and go off to war and go and fight. So we could talk about the horse gate representing war. We could talk about it representing an army defending the city. And there's always going to be the need for people, when it comes to the work of God, to recognize we, in our realm, have our own battles, which Ephesians 6 talks about. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities. Here's an idea for us to carry with us, that just as much as the valley gate is part of the trip, and the dung gate is necessary for us as we grow in God's grace, well, the horse gate also requires that we understand fighting the forces, not flesh and blood, which is still an integral part of our walk. And take a look at the people in verse 29. After them repaired Zadok, the son of Immer, against his house. After him also Shemaiah, the son of Shechaniah, the keeper of the east gate. So we have Shemaiah, whom the Lord has heard. And as we move up the gate here, so we just saw the horse gate, and it says in this particular passage, keeper of the east gate. And what is that? What did I just say? The person's name that's working on that gate is Shemaiah, right? Whom the Lord has heard. Shemaiah. Now, what's interesting about this, as I said, if you go to the Holy Land, or if you've ever been on a tour, you'll see this gate is closed up. In fact, it's one of the few gates that, if you're looking at the whole map as it is today, is the one you could identify, but it's closed up. And there's multiple things that happen there. If you've ever been there, you know that there is a cemetery. It's a Muslim cemetery right outside that gate, because early on, scholars said when the Jews actually were the first ones, before the Christians, to say that when Messiah returns, according to the scriptures, he will come through this gate. So during the time of occupation, a Muslim cemetery was placed there, and a wall, kind of a miniature wall, was built around it. And unfortunately, the idea was that any holy man would not defile himself by going through a cemetery, to prohibit Messiah from coming into his kingdom. But let me just tell you, if you read prophecy, the prophetic word out of Ezekiel specifically, chapters, I believe, 10, 40-something, 42, 44, 46, make reference to the east gate. Zechariah makes reference to the concept of when the feet of Messiah touch down, which most people understand it to be a great shaking of the earth will bust open this gate, and that's where he will come through. He will walk through that gate. And if you read Psalm 24, don't turn away from where you are. I'll read you Psalm 24. Psalm 24 talks a little bit about these gates when it says, "Lift up your heads, O ye gates, and lift up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in." Who is the King of glory? The Lord strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle. Lift up your heads, O ye gates, even lift them up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. Who is this King of glory? The Lord of hosts. He is the King of glory. Selah. So prophecy makes this gate very important. And interestingly enough, it's one of the only gates that has this distinct, being sealed up, distinct mark that if you were to look and you were looking for all these other gates, you might not find them. The dung gate you could probably still locate. May the force be with you. But the east gate is very important for prophecy. What I want to say here about the east gate is the east gate for us speaks of Christ's return. When you look at everything lined up, you almost have to stand back and say, this is not an accident. And it's not an accident. How did these people know when they were doing this, when they were repairing the walls? How did they know? And yet, just not even a couple hundred years later, this becomes a point of great contention among the religious universe, so that this particular area now is everybody has their eye on making sure, because no holy man, as I said, would come through a cemetery and defile himself. But when you're the Lord of glory, nothing defiles you, right? So this speaks of the Lord's return right here, this east gate. And as you move up, it says here we've got the horse gate, then we've got the east gate we just looked at. And if you keep going, after him repaired Malchiah, the goldsmith's son, the place of the Nethims and the merchants over against the gate of Mifkad. And this is kind of important because this gate, Mifkad, let's put a miniature wall and let's put a gate here. Mifkad. Some have translated this the gate of inspection, but others have translated this essentially how if visitors came in, they would obtain some form of a stamp or a visa. Now, I'm not really quite sure because the Hebrew is it's a very ambiguous word. It could mean inspection, it could mean appointment, it could mean registry. But what I like about this is if you're looking at this as the gospel and the gates, you really do see that if this gate does indeed come up as a concept of registry, the registry of persons and people. I love the fact that we know in the book of Revelation, when it talks about those whose names are written in the book of life, that if you keep going beyond this gate, you end up back at the top, which is back at the sheep gate. And I said, we started at Alpha and we ended at Omega. You start and finish with Christ as you go around these gates. And these gates help us understand a little bit more about why, believe it or not, while these people are building, I gave you the record, but let's talk about the results. The results, we obviously know they came under attack, they came under resistance, but it says, and they built the wall, and the wall was finished, the wall and the gates, in 52 days. That's pretty miraculous if you consider all the people that were working. None of these people were professionals, they weren't contractors, they weren't builders. But they came, and there is a specific verse in chapter 4 that is not a good translation. In chapter 4 and verse 6 it says, so we built the wall, and all the wall was joined together unto the half thereof, for the people, King James reads, had a mind to work. But the Masoretic text says they had a heart to work. Their heart was in the work. And when we come as people of God and our heart is in the work, God blesses that. Now let me just say, because somebody will twist my words, there is no work that gains us salvation. Salvation is a gift of God. It is a grace. It comes through faith in Jesus Christ through his finished work. When we're talking about the building up, for these people was the walls and the gates. For Ezra it was the people building the altar and the temple. And for us in this time, it is keeping the walls and the banner of faith up for a disbelieving world that has succumbed to many of the Sanballats and Tobiahs, many of the enemies and the conspiracies and all of the things that can get people down and depressed, instead of looking at this and saying, these people came. And yes, we're not done with looking at how they had to battle during their building. But what did Jesus say? I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it, which I've told you many times. Battling and building go hand in hand. From Christ's mouth right here to the gospel in the gates, you can see that not one person could say, well, they all worked in unity. Absolutely. But if you read later on, Spurgeon made famous that trowel, the picture of those working with a trowel and sword, each manned with some tool and some weapon. And that's what we are to be in the body of Christ, not turning the weapons on each other, which, as I've told you, I've been the recipient of, and many of you have been the recipient of, but we are supposed to be building up the body. That is still the message right here. So what do I want to tell you? What do I want you to take away from this tour through the gates? Well, first and most important, the record of those people who are memorialized in this chapter. They are memorialized here not for their past failures, but for when they came back, they did not make an excuse except for the nobles to get the work of the Lord done. That's the first thing. The second thing is the results. And the results are everlasting. Long after these people die, into a future time as we await the second coming of the Lord, these gates will play a part in the plan that God has laid down for the believers and the non-believers left on the face of the earth when he does return. So when you talk about things that are done here in time, there is a double happening. When Jesus talked about idle words coming out of our mouths, and people say, well, you believe that? Well, the Lord said it. But I also believe this. Revelation records those saints that it says of them, and their works followed them. These are those which were blessed in the Lord, and their works. They died in the Lord, and their works followed them. Now let nobody come into my presence and say that I'm trying to build something that is not of God. We are the people of God. The church belongs to Him. And the church is not a body of people sitting around idly twiddling their thumbs, but you get up, and like these people, you act as though the whole battle depends on you. And when we have, even if it's a reduced army like Gideon, when we have a band of people come together to say, I realize the importance of this ministry. I realize and see not only the gospel message in Nehemiah, but I see it in everything that's done here, because the most important thing that we're trying to get out is the Word of God, to bring light, like the fountain out there that is supposedly washing the world with the Word of God. But let me just tell you something. That fountain took people to come out and build it. It didn't just erect itself. The same thing is true of any work of God, and the people who know that they are His, and salvation has been the gift to them, will not be anything but like these that came out that said, arise, let us build. Now, what's the promise for us to claim as we go and as we build? Just like the people out of Nehemiah's book right here, our God shall fight for us. Every encounter that we meet something that contradicts the plan of God, we'll turn around and say, our God shall fight for us. And every time we encounter a problem that appears as though God's not doing or something is not working, we'll claim our God shall fight for us. And each time, I tell you, we have a great responsibility to rebuild. You claim with me, our God shall fight for us. You want to say it with me? Our God shall fight for us. Now, claim that in Jesus' name, and the victory is ours. That's my message. I'm Pastor Melissa Scott, pastor of Faith Center, Glendale, California. I teach every Sunday morning at 11 a.m. If you'd like to attend services with us, simply call the 800 number, that is 800-338-3030, to join us. If you'd like to watch, listen, and learn 24 hours a day, simply log on to our website at www.pastormelissascott.com.